Okay, Crazy Cats, let's do a little bonus video here. Let's take a look at another game that was played on Sunday. And the reason I'm showing a second video is because just like the first one, which had a lot of stuff in it, I hope you guys watched it like 9 times, right, Josh? Anyway, there are some things here in this game that repeat themselves over and over in your own games. So here is one example. Playing white is Scarlet and playing black is Gabriel. And here it's black's move, and black can enter into a typical four knights position. They can allow the center fork trick with bishop c5. They can play bishop to b4. A lot of you in these tournament games will see the move d6, which is quite playable. Don't let the fact that that pawn blocks in this bishop fool you. This is a very solid way to play for black. It's true that this bishop is kind of tucked in for a while, and most scholastic coaches, and that word scholastic means school age. Those of you who are, under high school, let's say ninth grade and under, or even the high school, they use the word scholastic because it means school age, anybody that's in school. Those coaches, they prefer that their students, especially at the beginning, get the bishop outside this pawn chain. Do you see the chain that you make? If the bishop is outside the chain, it's more active. When it's inside the chain, it tends to be obviously more passive. It only has one box it can move to, but there is a benefit of playing that way. So you do get the light square bishop out quickly, and you have a very strong support of the e-pawn. So there are no tricks in the center here, obviously. When you see this pawn structure here, so again, go back to the original position. So Gabriel plays the very solid d6. Here, Scarlet has a chance to play a move that, again, does not win, but it would be the most common move played in this position if two masters were playing. So just like in the other video, if you know how to pause your own video, make sure you do it now and see if you can come up with a move for white that's kind of sharp and creates a little bit of, excitement in the center of the board. Okay, I bet a lot of you looked at the move bishop to b5, which was Scarlet's move, which is terrific. Like, why not pin the knight, develop a minor piece, get ready to castle? It's an excellent move. The move I was looking for is the move d4. And the move d4, for example, if black ever takes, you take back with your knight here, and you reach a position where, very similar to the center fork trick, you've knocked out black's center pawn. You don't have more material. You don't have this great attack that's winning, but you do have more space than black. And that can be a benefit sometimes when it's easier to maneuver your pieces around. So keep that in mind. And by the way, they call this the Philidor pawn structure. That's named after the Philidor defense, which would be here after knight f3. What if black immediately plays the move d6? That's called the Philidor defense. Most of you in scholastic tournaments see the move knight c6, and that's probably the top move a grandmaster would play in this position. But keep in mind the move d6 is playable. Well, now you know a little trick of what to do against the Philidor defense. You can play the move, not there, I'm sorry. Let's go back here. You can immediately play the move d4. And with the same idea, knock out black center and try to play with more space. Okay, let's get back to the game. Here's where Gabriel played d6. Scarlet decided to pin, and Gabriel plays bishop to g4, pinning her knight, so it's like the battle of the pins. And guess what? We have the same idea. However, after d4, there's a little twist. If Gabriel took, and by the way, Scarlet did not play d4, but she could have. If he takes, she can actually take with the queen in this position because the knight here on c6 is pinned. And just like in the game with Sophie and Chris rather, George is his last name, just like their game, we learned a lot about pawn structure and not worrying necessarily when somebody can damage it. So here, can't black take this knight and kind of force the G pawn to become an F pawn. This is now an isolated pawn, meaning it has no friendly pawns on either file next to it. Yeah, all that stuff is true, but you know, white has a couple of bishops. These pawns in the middle are pretty strong, and I don't think white has to castle this way. I could develop my bishop here and castle the other way. Now, you could try to win a tempo from me by playing queen to d7. Now, how does that win a tempo? Now that this pin is broken, this knight is attacking the queen for real. So, you know, we could just take it to save time. Our queen is in the middle of the board on a really nice square. Develop our bishop. We're getting ready to castle queenside, and then use the G file to play with. And again, this is not winning for white, but it's more than playable, and I think white has a nice edge here, or a nice little advantage. They have a lead in development. They're going to use their pawns to control the center. And by the way, there's no rule that says later in the game, why can't you advance these pawns and change the structure, which you easily could do, okay? So keep these ideas in mind. And how did this come? From here. After the pin, if you know about this Philidor pawn structure trick, you can play the move d4. Take, queen takes, okay? That's how I got to that position. Now let's see what Scarlett did. Instead of d4, I love the alternative. She simply took her king and took it out of the middle. So she's playing very, very well here. Bishop to e7, still a useful move because it gets the piece to its only available square for now, but after knight f6, black can castle. Scarlett plays d3, developing her dark squared bishop. Here's knight f6. There's the development of the dark squared bishop, and there's castling. Okay, so, you know, if I told you the age or the rating of these kids, you might not believe it, because if you were to put this position on a computer and take it to some of the professional databases that are out there, you're going to see that this very position has been played many, many, many times by very strong masters. So these two kids are really playing well. Okay, so now Scarlett takes the knight, changing the pawn structure, plays queen to d2, which was a very, very interesting choice here, because now Gabriel had an opportunity to break the pawns in front of the king, but now it's a little bit different, isn't it? It's a little bit different because using the G file to attack this king is possible, but it's going to take a little bit of time. You're going to have to move your king over to this square here, and then at some point swing the rook over. In the meanwhile, when this pawn structure occurs, I want you to pay very close attention to the square I just highlighted, the f4 square. There are no pawns on white's side that can protect it, which means if you could get a knight there, for example, if I could magically play that move, you're going to have to take this knight with a piece in order to get rid of it, because you don't have any pawns that can do it, right? Now, I can't get the knight there in one move, but I could try this idea, which does two things. One, I might come in here at some point, but keep in mind also that the two bishops are looking at each other. Now, if you take this bishop, I think black is very pleased with what just happened, because if you go way back in this opening, pay very close attention to these ideas. Do you remember back here on d6? So I'm way back. I'm on move 3 now. And what did we say the downside of d6 was? The fact that this dark squared bishop got locked in there, right? If you go a few moves out in the position, now, so that was move 3. Let's jump to move 6 after white's d3. Do you see this dark squared bishop? All of the pawns in the middle of the board for white are on light squares. So they say that makes the other bishop that can slide through there your good bishop. In this particular position, this bishop is certainly not a bad piece. Again, why? It's outside the pawn chain. So this is a very active piece, but keep in mind, the the dark square bishop for white has no problems moving because the pawns in the middle are on the opposite color. That makes this a very good piece for white. And look at the top of the board. This is not the world's greatest piece. If it can't come out this way, it's certainly not coming out this way. Now, if we go to that variation that I was showing you back here, after you play knight h5, keep in mind this is white's good bishop. If you take blacks and they take back, they got rid of their bad bishop, and now they have their eye really on this square right here. And if that knight can hop into that square, you could have some problems. I like to sometimes just make random moves on the board. Like say a3, you put a knight on f4, that's an outpost square. If you're playing the white pieces, you better get rid of this thing. Again, if you play some other random move like pawn here, thinking that, oh, I want to gain some space on the queen side, that's nice, but now it's mate in two. You guys see it? You can pause your video. Checkmate in two moves. Yeah, it's just queen g5, king must go into the corner. Game is finished, I tell you. Okay? Yes, don't listen to my grammar, by the way. Like I'll say, white is busted in this position. Busted is, you don't want to put that in a composition for school, but no chess player in the world uses the word broken. They don't say, oh, white's position is broken. They say, no, white is busted. So get used to hearing that. When I say the game is finished, I say finished because I had a friend, that's the way he said finished when a game was over. Game is finished, I tell you. So anyway, you're getting a glimpse into my chess world. Check, king h1, mate. How do we find these patterns? Go back. Bishop took a pawn. Pawn took back. Look at the f4 square. How do we get to the f4 square? Knight h5. Of course, white doesn't have to play all of these moves, but at least you know the ideas. Okay? All right, let's go back to the game. So here, after queen d2, Gabriel decides not to break open the game here, but he breaks in the center. Okay, can't blame the man. The only problem is the e-pawn was left undefended. And because of that, Scarlett wins a pawn. Now, she could have taken it right away, but she chose to take here. It was sort of a mistake. I think Gabriel should now take this pawn right away, and he's actually going to have a fine position. You have to eliminate the attacker of this pawn. So Scarlett should have grabbed that pawn right away, and she would have been better. But Gabriel makes a mistake now and takes the pawn here. And so that's a big swing. Instead of having a really good position, he goes down a pawn. His bishop is being attacked. He moved it to f5, and because of that one little move, he ends up getting a losing position. The knight here on e5 found an excellent move here. You are purely in a middle game. I hope everybody watching this video understands that. The opening is over. I love the development of the pieces. So aside from the fact that white is up a pawn, you should also appreciate the development of the pieces. The e-file is open. It's clear, it should be clear to everyone that white is going to get there first. And when they do, and here's why they're going to get there first. She has this nice in-between move hitting the queen and bishop. And once the queen moves, there could be some trade. It's clear that a rook is going to come to e1 before a black rook comes to e8. You also see this bishop working really well. This light squared bishop is hitting a rock. I'm not quite sure where Gabriel's going to end up putting this guy, but the problem is her knight is too active. What I also like about this move, knight c6, is normally I tell my students, whenever you have a knight this deep in enemy territory, make sure it can do something effective, because sometimes knights come in and they don't always come out so easily. You know, if like in the game, Gabriel played queen d6 hitting the knight, and the knight could come back to this square, but a lot of times when a knight is in here, it's trapped but she doesn't have to worry because she has an out. She has like, well, I'll just take your bishop. And it's not a random trade. It's a very good trade because when you take back, white has an absolutely crushing move. It turns out she missed it here, but she found the same idea a little bit later. What she missed was to simply take this. And when you take on that square, you'll see that there's a pin, and you're going to be attacking this knight twice. And say the queen, I don't know, maybe queen d6. Now if you take that pawn, you take back with the G pawn, we have something similar to the game with Sophie and Chris, where I was talking about bishops of opposite color, but here it's a very different story. It's true that a lot of bishops of opposite color endings can be draws, but when you have an open king like this and all these weak dark squares, and moves like bishop f4 attacking something right away, you have ideas of lifting rooks up and over, checking. This bishop can come into h6. There's a really strong initiative or attack that white could get from this kind of position. So Scarlett missed knight d5, which would have been really strong, but I really like it at her level what she replaced that with. All right, she didn't see it, but she hasn't brought her rooks into the game yet. So she plays rook f to e1, which seems more logical than the other rook. Let me just go back. If you were to play rook a to e1, I think it's still a very strong move. The only problem is, unless you're planning to move the f pawn, it may not be clear what the rook on f1 is going to be doing. So her choice of which rook to move is very good. She plays that rook. This guy may have some more options later in the game. Gabriel slides back with the queen, and then she finds that same trick that I just showed you, except now she can't take this pawn with the knight because the queen is there. So first she just takes the knight, takes back. Now she finds knight to d5, queen to d6. Okay, she went on to get a really nice position, and she's winning here, but she missed a chance to win a whole piece. And I'm going to leave the video here for you to figure out. So before I end it, can you see a way for white to win a free pizza? Yeah, I call them pizzas sometimes. And I call pawns prunes. Why not? I've been doing this a long time. I get bored. Yeah, just simply knight e7 check. Look at every check and capture. King h8 only move. Knight takes f5. You're up a couple of pawns and a piece. The game is finished, I tell you. All right, my friends. Scarlett isn't going back to e3. She still has a terrific position, but it would have been a little nicer. I'm overwhelmed. I'm so pleased. There was so much to talk about in these videos. I could have done 2 more. The games were really good. Study your chess. Do your homework. Do your tactics. I'll see you next week.